of the social system is essentially accomplished through communication. And communication is a function of what is called language here, but it's not exactly the same system. These two, psychic meaning and social communicative meaning, are both functions of a meaning system that is tied to the notion of language. So at this point, we have a kind of priority of meaning over all other systems, at least the relevant ones we're discussing here, and a connection between meaning and language. And at that point, bio-posthumanism appeals to the Derridian deconstruction to show that this notion of language has to be understood as a radically ahuman, or a kind of technicity that is exposed to the operations of Derridian iteration, which allows no fixing of meaning in any fundamental instance, such as consciousness or the social whole. So with this, one consequence of this is that one can treat the social system and the psychic system as dependent modes, and one can then say, despite the fact that there, according to systems theory, there's no appeal to some neutrally given outside or exterior, we can import the concept of nature in a certain way for the purposes of what he calls theory. What are the purposes of theory? The purposes of theory, in this case, there's a certain ethical commitment to breaking down the humanist conception of the human being as being particularly characterized by language on the one hand, and we can bring back in a conception of the human being which treats it as, at least in terms of what he calls the first finitude, or finitude of flesh, treats it as coextensive with the animal world. So our flesh and their flesh, so to speak, are the same, and this is going to be a kind of basis for a certain intervention into debates in bioethics. Okay, well, the animal then on this conception is something like an autopoietic system, and that's, if you keep the priority of meaning in mind, we'll see that there are certain overlaps with the Heideggerian position. My argument, my question is this the only way, and indeed the proper way, of grasping meaning? That's systems theory adequate. Systems theory plus deconstruction, is that the way that we can understand meaning and therefore understand world? Because on this view, if systems theory plus deconstruction is adequate for meaning, then any system that, such as the animal psychic system and animal social system, that operates within this sphere constitutes world. Okay. The stumbling block for both Derrida and Luhmann is Heidegger's phenomenology of care, which Wolff assimilates, bio-posthumanism assimilates to the idealism of Descartes. Doing so allows him to dismiss Heidegger's posthumanism and introduce bio-posthumanism's concept of a non-human subject. But while Heidegger would agree that meaning is anchored neither in the psychic system nor in the social system, and while Heidegger would also agree that meaning is virtual, that is, the determined but open-ended states of a decision, and I should add that part of this discussion of meaning involves what Husserl calls what Husserl would call a distinction between empty and fulfilled intentions. So any intentional object, such as this bottle, has certain sides that are available to me and are fulfilled, but it points beyond these evident sides toward a system of further possible perceptions that if I move around the bottle will either be confirmed or disconfirmed. So there's a dimension of possibility in all of our perceptions and therefore in all of meaning on this view. And this is what bio-posthumanism calls the virtuality of meaning. It's a phenomenological notion, but they strip it of all the phenomenological character. Okay, come back to that. But I don't think the specificity of meaning is captured in this approach. So if that is so, then we cannot simply follow bio-posthumanism in its assumption that we who are in a meaningful world are human animals. Okay, so I'll talk in the next two sections about the two finitudes that bio-posthumanism attributes to meaning systems. And the first is the finitude of flesh, suffering, death, affectivity, what we call embodiment, but we can't quite call it that. And the second one is the finitude that is brought to our being by, since we are caught up in this technicity of language, the iterability of a non-human semiotic play.